Imagine standing on the edge of a mountain with nothing beneath you but a 1,000-meter drop. Now imagine someone looking at that empty space and telling you, walk forward. There is no road beneath your feet, no bridge stretching across the valley, no machinery holding you safely against the cliff. Only a narrow path suspended against the face of the mountain. And centuries ago, in the rugged mountains of China, people built routes exactly like this. No cranes, no engines, no modern construction equipment, just stone, timber, simple tools, and people willing to work where one mistake could mean falling hundreds of meters. The story begins in a landscape that seems almost designed to stop human movement. Deep inside China's mountains, enormous cliffs rise almost vertically from the valleys below. For travelers, soldiers, traders, and local communities, these mountains were not simply beautiful scenery, they were barriers. Moving from one settlement to another could mean facing steep slopes, dangerous terrain, and routes that seemed almost impossible to cross. But instead of accepting the mountain as an obstacle, ancient engineers found another solution. They went through its side. Workers carved paths directly into the cliffs, cutting into the rock to create footholds and narrow passages where none had existed before. In some plank road systems, wooden beams were fitted into holes carved deep into the rock. Those beams supported timber platforms that extended outward over the empty space, creating a road where, only moments before, there had been nothing but a vertical wall. And every part of the process demanded precision. A worker could not afford to make a careless cut. A beam had to be positioned correctly. A foothold had to be strong enough. Because below them was not another platform. It was the valley. There was no modern safety harness waiting if something went wrong. No mechanical lift to bring workers back to solid ground. The tools were simple. The challenge was anything but. Stone had to be broken by hand. Timber had to be shaped and placed with care. And the entire route had to follow the natural form of the mountain while remaining strong enough to carry people, animals, and supplies. So why would anyone attempt something this dangerous? Because the alternative was often even harder. These roads could transform an impossible mountain into a passage. They connected isolated settlements. They opened routes through difficult terrain. They allowed people to move through regions where an ordinary road simply could not exist. And that is what makes these structures so fascinating. They were not built simply to impress. They were built because people needed to get somewhere. Food had to be carried. Goods had to be transported. Travelers had to reach the next settlement. Communities separated by enormous cliffs still needed a way to remain connected. And eventually, some of these routes became something far more extraordinary than simple mountain paths. They became roads hanging from the mountain itself. If you enjoy stories about forgotten engineering, impossible structures, and the remarkable things humans built against the odds, subscribe to Megacore, because this is only the beginning. Now picture the moment a newly completed section of cliff road was used for the first time. The valley stretches hundreds of meters below. The mountain presses against one side of your body, and ahead, the path disappears around another wall of rock. You take one step, then another, and with every step, the scale of what was built becomes harder to ignore. Because suddenly, you understand something. The people who created these roads were not trying to conquer the mountain. They were trying to negotiate with it. They did not flatten the cliffs. They did not force the landscape to become something it was not. They studied the mountain, found the spaces where a path could exist, and slowly created a route through a place that seemed to have no route at all. And there is another detail that makes these roads even more remarkable. They were built for ordinary human needs. Someone carried food along them. Someone transported goods. Someone was simply trying to reach the next village before nightfall. Behind every wooden beam, every foothold, and every cut made into the stone was a practical reason to keep going. That makes the story feel less like an ancient legend and more like a glimpse into everyday life in a landscape where almost every journey demanded courage. The mountain was enormous. The road was tiny. But that tiny road changed what was possible. It turned separation into connection. It turned an obstacle into a route. And it proved that sometimes human progress does not come from overpowering nature. Sometimes it comes from finding a way to move through it, one step at a time. To build a road across ordinary ground, you need space. But on the face of a cliff, there is almost none. That was the real challenge ancient Chinese builders were facing. They were not simply constructing a road, they were trying to create a route in a place where nature had provided no route at all. Workers carved sections directly into the rock, while plank road systems relied on timber beams anchored deep inside the cliff. Every part of the construction had to follow the mountain's natural shape, adapting to every crack, every ledge, and every change in elevation. There was no straight line to follow. The mountain decided where the road could go, and the builders had to work with it. Imagine what that process must have looked like. A worker reaches a section of almost vertical rock. There is no flat ground beneath him, no convenient platform where he can simply unpack his tools and begin. He first has to find a way onto the cliff. Then he has to create a foothold, secure the materials, make the first section stable, and only then can the road begin to move forward. One small section becomes a platform. That platform creates access to the next section. The next section makes room for another. Slowly, piece by piece, something that should not exist begins to take shape. A road. But these routes were never simply demonstrations of courage or ancient craftsmanship. They were infrastructure. They served a purpose. In a mountainous world, the ability to move people and supplies could determine how communities survived and connected with one another. Trade depended on it. Communication depended on it. Supplies depended on it. And sometimes, access to another community depended on it. A dangerous road could still be far more valuable than having no road at all. That is what makes these structures so fascinating today. When we look at ancient monuments, we usually ask the same question: how did they build something so enormous? But cliff roads force us to ask something different. How did they build something when there was nowhere to stand? There was no single invention that solved the problem. No machine suddenly made the work easy. It was a combination of patience, geometry, stone, timber, manpower, and an extraordinary willingness to keep working above the void. And the work did not necessarily end when the road was finished. Over generations, these routes could be repaired, extended, abandoned, and rebuilt as the landscape changed and human needs changed with it. Some eventually disappeared, others survived only in fragments. But what remained offers a glimpse into a world where engineering was not about overpowering nature with machines. It was about understanding what the landscape would allow. And perhaps that is the most remarkable lesson these ancient roads leave behind. The builders did not flatten the mountains. They did not move the cliffs. They did not try to make the landscape obey them. They simply found a way through it. Today, when we see a narrow path clinging to the side of a massive wall of rock, the first reaction is almost instinctive. It looks impossible. But somewhere inside that impossible view is the work of people who stood in places where most of us would hesitate to even look down, and built a road forward. No engines, no steel cranes, just human hands, ancient tools, timber, stone, and a mountain that seemed determined to say no. And somehow, they made it say yes. Because when you think about it, That tiny road represents something much bigger than engineering. Human beings have always looked at places that seemed impossible and asked the same question: is there another way? On these cliffs, the answer was not discovered overnight. It was built slowly. One beam, one cut, one careful step at a time. The road may look fragile from a distance, but its very existence tells us something powerful. A barrier does not always have to be defeated. Sometimes, you simply have to understand it well enough to find a way through. And perhaps that is the true brilliance of these ancient roads. The engineering did not force nature to change. It learned how to move through it.